Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this virtual summit presentation, Tips and Tricks for Making Online Discussion Boards Take Off. My name is Danny Shapiro, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speakers today are Tami Tacker and Lea Rosenberry of Purdue University Global. Professor Tacker's online journey began over 17 years ago. In addition to teaching, she has served as the subject matter expert on multiple course revisions and is the course lead for Purdue Global's highest enrollment math class, Survey of Mathematics. She is responsible for keeping the course current and relevant and building a faculty learning community for the course. She earned her BS and MS in mathematics and has taught all levels of mathematics courses, both on-site and online. Professor Rosenberry has been teaching college-level math for 20 years. She has her master's in education with an emphasis in math education and over 24 graduate hours in mathematics and statistics. With over 16 years in online education, she has experience in curriculum development, creating online content, training and mentoring new instructors, and writing and facilitating online courses. Lea is currently an IT specialist at Penn State and is assisting in the effort to move the university to remote teaching. We're very excited to have both of you with us here today. Audience, if you do have questions during the webinar, please enter those into the Q&A box located on the panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end of the talk. And on that note, I'd love to hand it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Danny, and we really do appreciate everyone being here. We have been online for a really, really long time, but I know that for some people, this is the very first time they're going online. So what we would like to do is share some ideas that we've used, that we've had for online discussion boards. That seems to be one of the really hot topics right now. Just a little bit about Purdue Global. We are a non-traditional school. In other words, 30% of our enrollment is actively in the military. 52% of our graduates are the first ones in their family to do so. And about 63% of our students have at least one dependent. So we are truly aimed at helping the adult learner. And that's why we have found the online discussion boards to be so helpful. Whenever we go through a course revision, we are always looking for ways to help the students see how they will use this math in their real life. So that's really what we were going for whenever we started developing our new discussion questions. We also wanted to include some humor, and Lea will talk to us about that in just a little bit. And instead of just having students reply to each other in a general way, we tried some guided peer replies. In other words, we asked the students to reply to a classmate in a certain way. Maybe they can tweak their problem or add to it, different things like that, and we'll show you some examples of what we've done. Now, if you were to walk into a math class and you saw these 4 objectives, you're going to have one of 2 reactions. If you're a math person, you're going to say, yes, finally. But if you're not a math person, then you might start sweating and your stomach drops and it's just not going to be a really good day for you. But what if instead of seeing these 4 objectives, you walked in to these 4 things? I think all of us can relate to at least the last one, if none of the others. And the other 3 sound pretty fun. So that would engage our students immediately instead of scaring them off immediately. Let's talk about the evil genius. He's one of our favorite ones. This is a sample discussion question that we've used. It has to do with rational equations, and pretty much what's happened is you have been injected at birth and you're trying to figure out how much of this stuff is left in you. Now, the good thing about this is the older the student, the less stuff they're going to have in their system. So it really gives our older students a little bit of a hip hip hooray for themselves. And while we were creating these, the funny thing is, I have to tell the story. The funny thing is, when we were creating this discussion question, Lea and I actually had a serious conversation as to whether 100 cc's was a lot for a baby. So even though we didn't really need to worry about that because it was fictitious, we tried to make it a little realistic when possible. Whenever the student replies to their classmates, the first reply, we said, well, you know what? What about in 2 years from now? So in other words, they're tweaking the problem just a little bit. They're doing another math problem and showing their mastery of the skill. But then some of our favorite ones come from the second response. It's when we're asking the class to share a story about this injection. Maybe it's what it's done for you or what it's prohibited you from doing, anything like that to make, you know, just a little more lighthearted is encouraged. And our students are very creative. Some of them are very, very funny. And if you do choose to do something like this in your courses, I think you're going to be very, very surprised at the answers you get because they're really good. Leah, you want to go ahead and take it over from here?
Yes, ma'am, I will. Oh, you do have to stop sharing. I guess that's the way they have it set up. That's okay. 1 second here. There we go. So one of the things that we try to do is inject a little bit of humor. And so we decided to put our favorite memes that we use in between the sections today as we go through our presentation. So there are 3 kinds of people in this world: those who are good at math and those who aren't. It's just a small thing, but when you flash a screen like this, maybe you can put it up in an announcement, or we have live seminars so you can do it in a seminar. It just sort of breaks things up a little bit, sort of helps to calm the nerves. That's probably a good idea at this time. How about it? So it's just one of the ways that we use humor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the research behind kind of why we should include some humor, and then we'll show you some more examples. So a study by Appleby in 2018 found that, and some of this, I know you guys know this, teachers do not have to be serious to be effective. And that makes sense, right? I mean, add a little levity here and there, and so you can still, it's not like back in the olden days with a ruler and things like that. You can still have a good time and still learn. And in fact, increase in learning, self-motivation, class attendance, and test performance were seen whenever humor was increased. And so I know we kind of set this up as a Q&A, but if you would like to, please feel free to share. I've had some great teachers that I can remember over the years, and it's like the sort of the ones with a softer side are the ones that I remember the most, although there is one stickler I remember. And so humor does that, right? Humor helps a little bit out with the just kind of softening and sort of, making things a little bit more fun or whatever, especially in a math class. So another thing that study found, the creation of a positive social and emotional learning environment was one of the results of adding a little bit of humor. And so that's huge, right? Math sometimes, and lots of other subjects too, but being a math teacher, I feel this one for sure, kind of gets a bad reputation sometimes. And so having something that gives the students more of a positive energy about the class really helps in as far as getting their attention, making them want to come to class, and so forth. And then the last finding from Appleby was a reduction of anxiety and stress in dealing with difficult material. This is the huge one, right? And it goes a lot along with growth mindset, for example. And so when students get confronted with a really difficult problem, we need to try to give them strategies so that they can sort of calm down and calm down's not really the right word, but kind of like work through that stress so that they can keep on trying instead of it be something that sort of makes them avoid the subject. And so it's really important that we can do that, and humor is one of those things that can help. McCabe, Sprout, and Underdown found that students perceive their success even in difficult classes based on their interactions with instructors. So they tie their success to their relationship and their interaction with instructors. And so if humor can help with that, then that's a really good thing. Even though the class might be a difficult one or maybe not their favorite, if you can do something to kind of strengthen those bonds, it really goes a long way in helping the student feel more connected to you and then also do better in the class. Also found that using humor to make connections with online students resulted in higher success rates and levels of achievement. So up to now, I've been talking about kind of relationship things. Now we're actually talking about increased success rate. I personally, and we could have a discussion about this as we go along, I personally feel like when they are more comfortable and less stressed, they spend more time on the subject. And then because they spend more time, then that is what increases the success rates and the levels of engagement. Just my hunch, but that's the way I sort of feel like it works. And so anything we can do, like I said, to kind of make it a little bit more fun, a little bit less stress can really help, even with the levels of achievement in the class. So I'm going to show you another example now. This is our old discussion question. We used to do a question on quadratic equations, since we would say which method of solving quadratics is your favorite. So we had factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula. They would have to say why. And then they would choose a quadratic equation from a list and solve it using their preferred method. So that would be some work. Their first response to a classmate would be to choose a classmate and then solve their quadratic equation using a different method. So that way they would see that there was two ways to solve the same problem. That was good. And then the second one would be, a second response to a classmate would be to check a problem. So check a classmate's quadratic equation solution. So although those are good things to know how to do, sort of boring, right? I mean, nothing really fun in there. So we switched this one up with the human cannonball. And so with this, we said you're being shot out of a cannon. You're going to use this equation. We gave them a quadratic equation to determine how many seconds it will take for you to hit the ground. And so we gave them the equation. We said, y equals 0 because that's hitting the ground. And so they would solve that equation based on what information that they chose. So they would have to choose a height off of the ground and then also a velocity. Now that really did two things. First of all, for the velocity and the height, everybody would choose a different velocity and height, pretty much. And so that sort of helped with plagiarism too, because that would sort of plagiarism proof it, because very few people would choose the same velocity and the same height. They could choose a height, I think it was up to 100, or I can't even remember anymore, but they would choose a height and they would choose a velocity based on some parameters that we gave them. And so from there, they would figure that out. Everybody would have a different problem theoretically because everybody would choose a different velocity and height. As far as responses to classmates go, the first response to a classmate would be to find the height of the human cannonball in 1 second, 5 seconds, and 10 seconds. And then the second response to a classmate, and this is my favorite, is that we would either have them, if they were a math person and they wanted to do more math, which is totally fine, we love those people, they would just check the classmate's solution. So that totally works. That would be great. The other one was, and maybe we have students in our classes who enjoy writing a little bit more, or some other subject. We allowed them to write or create a scenario, but sort of write about it, about why their classmate was shot out of a cannon. So we just gave them a little bit of an opportunity to do something else that they liked as far as writing goes. And we got great responses. We got really funny responses. People would be, when we would go into seminar the next time, people would be talking about the discussion question. I never had that before. And so they would be, they would just be, making jokes about it and things like that. So that was kind of neat. We call these guided peer replies, and Tami talked about it in her example that she showed you also. So guided peer replies are where you kind of guide them in the right direction of how you want them to respond to somebody. Sometimes discussion questions have peer replies that are just like reply to two students with substantive comments that advance the discussion. And at least at our level, students need a little more guidance than that. Like they need to be told, or at least given a hint of something that they can do. they don't mean to say good job, but if you don't give them a little bit of guidance, in my experience, that's exactly what happens. They try to say something substantive or that advances the discussion, but a lot of them don't even really know what that means sometimes. And so that's what that is. As far as guided peer replies go and why we should use them, DiCristofaro, almost said that wrong, Murphy, Heron, and Klein found that online conversations more closely resembled an in-class discussion when guided peer replies were used. If you were standing at the front of a classroom and you wanted students to talk about a certain thing, you would actually reply and kind of direct the conversation in that way. Well, that's the same thing that you would be doing with a guided peer reply. So let me go back one slide. So in this one, what happens is we're making sure that they're talking about the height of the cannonball. And so what that does is we're making sure that they flip it around and they're talking about that function. If all we did was have them solve the equation, they might not get the other side of that. And so that's what a guided peer reply can do. They also found greater elaboration of content with challenging topics when, and that they were more fully analyzed. So sort of like giving them an aim, right? Like sort of helping them decide what to talk about would give them more, I'm only thinking about the word ammunition right now, but it's almost like it gave them more, like another tool in their tool belt where they would say, oh, okay, I can talk about this. And so then they could go do a little reading, maybe figure out what was meant by that, and then they would have more to say. And so it really did, when we started using guided peer replies, it made a huge difference as far as the quality of our discussions. And so we really liked that and really found it helpful. So I'm gonna show you another meme. And so it says, I see you're doing your math homework in pen. I too like to live dangerously. And so like I said, it's just those little things you can kind of throw in that hopefully make your students laugh a little bit and go from there. Tami, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share so you can take it over again. There you go, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We have to laugh whenever we look back at some of those discussion questions. For example, the one about pick your favorite method to solve quadratic equations, because
who has a favorite?
Everyone has a favorite, right? It's all right. We learned. A few more examples of ways that we've tried to show the students how we can use math outside of the math classroom and maybe get a little entertaining in the mix is talking about a trapeze and the time it takes for a trapeze to go back and forth. That's a really cool way to introduce radicals and talk about those. And G, of course, is a constant. L is the length of the trapeze, and it gives us a few things that we can play with there. So this was also one of the students' favorites, because who doesn't want to trapeze? Then the first guided peer reply was, what if the trapeze was a little bit longer? And like Leah alluded to earlier, if we're in front of a class and we're working a problem like this, we normally say, well, hey, let's change this height. What do you think will happen to the time? Or let's change the time. What'll happen to this? We tend to do that anyway in front of our classes. So this is a way for our students to kind of get that additional learning and additional context around the problem. And then of course the third one, yeah, these are great. Whenever you have some engaged students with humor, they really do well on the third peer reply there. And then caffeine. I know that some of us love it, some of us don't, but it's kind of a fact of life, especially for college students of any age. So we came up with the half-life of caffeine. They get to go pick their favorite drink, and it doesn't matter what it is, their favorite drink. They figure out how much caffeine they are drinking with each serving. So if they just drink 1 can of Pepsi, they can figure that out. If they drink 1 cup of Folgers or whatever it happens to be, they can figure that out. Some students will actually say, well, I drink 2 of these at a time. And so they actually use the total amount of caffeine for two cans or whatever it is in their equation. And as peer replies, the first one is, hey, well, what about 2 hours later? Like maybe it's getting to be dark and you want to go to sleep. Are you going to be able to go to sleep with this much caffeine? But what if they actually did drink 3 of them right in a row? So you can change this up however you want, whether it's drinking 3 of them right in a row or delaying it 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours to get them to see how half-life works. Any of those would do for a peer reply too. Because again, our goal is to get them connected to the topic and understanding the math and realizing that the math they're doing in our classes really does apply to outside of our class. And then of course that third one, share anything. Those are the greatest ones. Another thing, especially if you're doing a liberal arts math, we talk about perimeter and area. You can have your student design a shed. And I'm telling you, some students really take off with this one. It's like their dream to be able to design something in their backyard. So they start and they get the dimensions, then they'll go shopping. You can put in whatever you want to put into these questions. The thing is, you're not just giving them something and asking them to find the area and perimeter. You're saying, hey, design your own. You can even open it up to different shapes if you'd like. Find the area of the floor so that you can buy tile or wood or carpet. Find the perimeter because maybe you want to hang some pretty lights or do some crown molding or some baseboards. There are lots of ways that we can get them to engage in these calculations without just saying, find the area of these 2 dimensions. And they really like to go shopping, I'll tell you that. Students really like to go shopping. Also a budget, that's the first thing that I usually hear from students or from people whenever they hear I'm a math teacher and we start talking about it. They say, I wish I'd learned this, this, and this in high school. And you know what one of them usually is? Budgeting. They wish they had learned how to budget. So even though we have a little bit of non-traditional going on in our school, there's still a lot of our students who have never been taught how to budget. So that is a very applicable and practical thing that we can help them with. And then when they leave our class, they still have that tool and they can use it. And not only will it help them in their personal life, but if they are a business major, it's really going to help them a little bit further down the road when they get into the business sector. We tell them, okay, here are some categories, split it up. Percentages can be brought in here. And it's really one of those things that can help the students take what we're trying to talk to them about, take it with them after they leave our class. And I think that's one thing that we're just really trying to focus on. Leah, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
There we go. Dear Algebra, if you could stop asking us about your X, that would be great. Okay, so I did get a question in the Q&A about, is this only about math? Totally not just about math. You can apply these strategies to other subjects as well. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk about next. And then we're also going to do some significant brainstorming. If you have a subject and you would like us to help you come up with some ideas, we're going to be glad to do that. So as far as best practices goes, use humor to support course material. Content comes first, no question about that. You're going to integrate humor with the content if you can, but you're not going to let that distract from anything. And I'm just trying to drag this Q&A over here. Sorry about that. Find an application for the material. So this is one too. So if you are covering certain material, I mean, we were talking about in the Q&A, college composition. So I think, I mean, you could you could choose a topic or a writing prompt, and you could just try to choose something that could go in a more humorous direction. For your students or whatever. And so you're going to incorporate humor. You might use a certain scenario. You might let students come up with a scenario. Your scenario, your specific subject might not allow for that, but you can still bring humor in different ways with memes between presentations or things like that. And so it's just a way, like I said, to keep things a little bit lighter. Again, we're not going to do anything that's not going to support the content. That's the whole point, and so forth. Again, I sort of mentioned this just a second ago, find ways for students to use humor. So allow creativity via maybe explanations for situations. That's what we did whenever we were talking about, okay, why did your friend get shot out of a cannon? So you could take things from there and let students sort of kind of use their imagination to bring the humor in then. So what we were going to do now, we were just going to do a little bit of brainstorming. I'm going to put this slide up here. We actually did this at a conference. We did this presentation at a conference. And so we had people pair up or get in threes or whatever. We don't have that option now, so that's okay. But you can either share your topic of study, or you can come up with a discussion question and share it with the group. So you can come up with a discussion question that you think is a good one and kind of how to flip it around. Or you can give a topic and we can try and help you, meaning all of us, we can try and help you find a way to kind of give it a like a kind of an edge to it or whatever. I remember, and Tammy, you're going to help me with this. When we did this one live, I remember somebody saying about, it was for a law class. And so was it that, did she say that they would, had to describe a crime and then they had to, do you remember what I'm talking about? I'm going to put little Tammy's face over here so I can look in the right place. Here we go. Do you remember it was, you had to describe a crime and then people had to say whether they thought you did it or not based on the description that you gave? And so that was really involving for everybody because everybody was trying to figure out whether the details were true and things like that.
I remember that one, but then I remember the other one, and this is for business majors. It could be for writing also, but it was a hiring manager, remember?
Oh, yes, that was a good one.
So you've received this resume, and I think, didn't they say they checked their social media and they found some questionable posts or something like that? So how would you respond to someone who's applied to a job when you're thinking, oh, I don't know? So those were the two that kind of popped in my head because those just sounded super funny and awesome. And if I was in a class, I'd be all over it, even though I'm not a writer. And I'm glad you guys are asking about writing. We focus on math. That's our content. That's our subject. But I'm glad you guys are asking because the principles, just being able to take something that normally we're the instructors we're excited about, but normally students aren't. If we can take it and just tweak it a little bit to spark their interest, then our engagement is going to go up a whole lot. There was another one too.
So somebody asked about examples for writing. Can you give me an example of a prompt that you would use now? And then we could try and get people to give ideas about how we could sort of flip that around into, to add a little bit more engagement. Yeah, and you can just type those in there. I remember when I took composition way back in the day, we would have like a persuasion paper, think of the other topics. Tammy, you have kids that probably have done this more recently than mine. A demonstration one.
They've had to do business type things also, just like letters.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we want. We want you guys to come up with either share a discussion question that you have right now, and we'll try to think of some ways that you can kind of add some whatever to it. Okay, so we have in literature, you can ask students what their feelings are. Ooh, that's a good one. So Judy says in literature, you can ask students what their feelings are about a character's actions after a certain chapter. I love that idea. It's kind of more in depth. It gives students a way or a reason to talk about kind of emotions and things like that. I like that idea a lot. Finding zeros of a polynomial function. So you're solving, so let's see.
I think the human cannonball would be one example of that.
Yeah, Katerina, that is what the human cannonball was. Like, we were finding the zeros of a function based on the velocity and the height that we put in. Do you use different equations, or does everybody use the same equation? Like, how do you go about it right now? Or do you let them make up an equation? That's another thing that we do once in a while to kind of try and add things to it. Well, like we said before, whenever we said, oh, we let them choose the velocity and the height, that way it sort of gave everybody their own equation. Like, no two were exactly alike because they were using something. We do things like the caffeine one, people would use their age down to the day. And so very few people were born on the exact same day, on the exact same year. So that way all of those were a little bit different. So it's kind of a way to sort of plagiarism proof by just giving them each a tiny bit little different of a problem. So that's one thing to think about with those. I'm opening up my questions and answers. What else?
And I know that we're talking about writing composition, but Judy had mentioned literature. And whenever we're asking our students to do something, it doesn't always have to be writing, right? All of our students, guess what they have? They have smartphones and they have the capability to make videos. So that's also super cool. It allows you to make an actual connection with the students in the class, especially since we're all going online now. The class can make a connection with each other because they can see you and they can hear you. So if possible, I think incorporating a video as a response would be a good move.
So Judy says when a student replies in a discussion board, will his or her name appear with the reply? It does, Judy. Do you use a learning management system, or I'm trying to figure out. If you use a learning management system, it depends on which one it is and how you set it up, but you set up a discussion and you can put the prompt there, and then students can reply and it will show their name. In most learning management systems, I know there is in Blackboard, and I know there you go. In Blackboard, there is an option that says that you can allow anonymous replies. I never enable that. I want students to, talk to each other just like they would in a regular classroom. If they were sitting in a regular classroom, they would know that they were talking back and forth to each other. So I never enable anonymous replies. I always make sure that the name is there. Is there a reason why you would want it anonymous? Because one thing you can do if you're asking a discussion question is there's a setting where a student has to post a response to the discussion question before they see everybody else's response. So that way you're kind of making them answer the question before they can look at everybody else's and kind of base an answer on what everybody else said. So there is that, but I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to do or. Oh yeah, perfect. So so you just make sure that they are all responding. A really good idea is to make sure that you be really specific. Like we always say, one response to the discussion question and then two other responses. If you use guided peer replies where you explain how you want them to reply, you don't want to be too strict in that, but you want to do enough to kind of direct the conversation. And so you want to make sure that they do all three of those posts. But yeah, unless you mark anonymous, you'll be able to see who posted and when and all those details. Absolutely.
Hey, Leah, I was looking over and Annette had asked how to use humor for a controversial paper topic.
Ooh.
And the only that can get dicey, I understand that. The only thing I can think of is maybe choose a controversial topic that's funny.
Yeah,
For example, the Star Wars movie that came out, was that only a few months ago?
I don't even remember. It's all
There
running
was a,
together at this point.
there was a lot of talk about whether Jar Jar Binks was really a Sith Lord or not. So you can
You're
always
such
have something that's controversial, but is not going to be so deep and dark that students are going to either, get their feelings hurt or accidentally offend someone, something like that.
And what you just said, that's a really good idea too. Depending on, the whole point of the class might be to discuss the very controversial thing. So you have to do that. In that case, you want to put some bookends around it to make it more fun. And, make sure you do some things at the beginning of class to keep everybody in a good mood and things like that. And then also at the end of class, just to sort of lighten things up. If your class is going to be online, you can do the lightning, with announcements and things like that, so that you can just sort of give people a little break. Have you guys seen the coronavirus song that a professor did? Have you guys seen that? I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if you guys can see the questions and answers. I can do to all panelists. I'm going to share this with you just because it's funny. And so let me dig that up for just 1 second. And
It's okay. Go ahead. I saw
yeah.
another question. I think, Judy, you were asking about trying to make sure that students do the work. I mean, the easiest way is to make it part of their grade. And then they're going to get in there and do it. The thing is, you want them to want to do it. And that's what we found whenever we put a little bit of humor in the discussion boards. Our students look forward to doing them. They read them and they kind of laugh and then they kind of get into it. So instead of forcing it down their throats, you are going to respond to this discussion board because it's part of your grade. Yeah, it's part of your grade, but also we're going to try to have a little bit of fun with it.
So sorry. That would be the song. Sorry. I'm muting now.
It's okay. We didn't hear it. I didn't hear it, at least. So we have some composition. We have literature. Ooh, confidence intervals. Well, the way I explain it is I talk about when your friend tells you they're going to be there at 6, give or take 10 minutes. That's kind of the way I start explaining it. So anytime you can have them identify a confidence interval in that way, using what time their friend usually comes to pick them up, or what time their kid usually gets home from school, or something like that. Just try to make it apply more than just, here are the numbers, do the math. So we have statistics, literature, composition. What other subjects are out there?
I'm going to paste this link, but now you guys don't all leave us to watch this.
No, they're going to wait around to see the last slide.
There you go. I don't know if it's in here.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
No
Sort of.
I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it.
Thank you. I was looking at the regular Q&A. I was not looking at the chat. I apologize. There were questions in there I didn't see. I wondered where you were talking about things from. Ooh,
okay.
Confidence intervals and statistics. I love it. Okay, so Kaylin, did you already talk about this, Tammy?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so what I would do is you can't really, it's almost like you make the scenario funny, not the actual. I mean, finding a confidence interval is finding a confidence interval. So the math is the same, but you can make the scenario part of it funny, like, let's see. Kaylin is trying to make sure that a certain number of her students pass statistics. You know, what kind of grade or what kind of help does she have to give them to make sure that a certain number of them pass, or something like that? So you can change the scenario around it, even though, like I said, the math stays the same. And it depends on what your numbers are. So if you could find your numbers within 1 to 100 and so forth, you could do it that way. And so it's one way.
All right,
Rearranging my windows here.
The next slide is your favorite, Leah.
Ugh, this is not a good slide.
Yes, it is.
Is it the next one?
It is the next one.
Okay, hold on. And one more question first. Are any of you, we don't know who is everybody and so forth. Are you guys out for the rest of the year now? Are you K-12? Are you university? Everybody's university? Like, give us a little details there. We just found out, I teach at Penn State also. We just found out today that we're out for the rest of the semester. At first they told us we were out for just 3 weeks. And honestly, I think it was better that they said 3 weeks at first, because it sort of gave everybody a chance to breathe and kind of get used to it or whatever, like used to the idea. And then now today they said the rest of the semester. I think people are feeling a tiny bit better. And so now they feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, it's a crazy thing, but you'll be good. Yeah, so Tulsa, you guys have no idea for how long. Now, Bruce, does that mean closed for the rest of the semester or moved online? When I say closed for the rest of the semester, I just mean moved online. At Penn State, we have lots of online classes, so it's just a matter of getting the ground classes moved to online. And that doesn't mean like only, because that's a crazy thing. At PG, where Tami and I teach, we are already online, so we're kind of lucky in that respect. Yeah, Bruce, moved to online. Exactly. If nothing else comes of this, I think one of the silver linings will be that many people who have avoided online up to now will be forced to dip their toes in. And so in that way, maybe they will see that they like certain parts, and maybe at least they'll want to offer certain things online. We're using what's called it's called a minimum viable option, which sounds terrible. But the way that we started was, we say this minimum viable option, we're telling instructors, okay, you have to have, you have to have a syllabus, your content, your this, your that, and so it has a list. So we're teaching people to do that. And once they're up and running, we hope to add to that and, go from there.
Hey, Sandy and Katarina are close to me. I live in Austin.
There you go.
I go through Corsicana all the time, Sandy, because my parents live in East Texas. And here's the thing, not everybody in here is math, and that's fine. But here's just what we're trying to get across. It's really easy to just take a question and just plop it in a discussion board and be done with it. But if we're really trying to spark our students' interest and get them engaged and get them to remember the things that we're trying to teach them, it might be a good idea to just tweak it a little bit, add just a different dimension, and that way the students are gonna do better because they're gonna be more interested in it.
And you'll have more fun too, because they'll be having more fun. That'll make you have more fun. They'll be talking about it. They'll be, it just like I said, it just adds a little bit of levity, which we all need right now. And so Tami's right on.
Another thing is, the reason we were kind of guiding their peer replies, and those of you who have taught online without any restrictions, you may know what I'm talking about, but sometimes you can get in there and there's a post and then they're like 18 to 20 responses, and that's great, right? But we don't want them to say the exact same thing. And so that's why whenever in math, are trying to do this, we say, okay, reply to one person this way and one person this way. That way you can get your stuff in. We know it's not going to be a copy of anybody else's. And it kind of helps organize, because, you know, math people are naturally OCD just a little bit. So it helps us keep everything organized.
And the other thing too, lots and lots of resources are popping up online all the time, because this is happening to everybody. And so lots and lots of resources popping up. I mean, Hawks did this great thing by offering these sessions, and, you know, people are getting information here. You can feel free to reach out to Tami and I if you have any questions. We'll be glad to help. If nothing else, we have been teaching online forever, so we can sort of, like, you know, give you advice about, you know, sort of how to do certain things, or at least, you know, give you someone to bounce some ideas off of. John, I know we are having such a thing at Penn State right now about online exams, because one of the things nobody is set up to handle, like if you do use an outside service like ProctorU or Respondus or any of those things, they're not set up to handle the volume either. And so it is just really it's a challenge for everybody. Oh, I haven't heard of Proctorio. Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, Leah, I was going to say something else. I'm not sure if we actually said it during the presentation or not, but whenever you come up with something, if you're trying something a little bit new and you want to make it fun and interesting, then it's always, always, always a good idea to share it with a colleague.
Yeah.
And get them to read over it and see if it makes sense. Because when I write something, I mean, it makes total sense. But then when Leah reads it, she's like, Tami, I don't know what this means. So it's always a good idea to kind of share with some of your colleagues, you know, share with like your buddy, and then share with a couple of other colleagues in the same department. And that way you can make sure that with the diversity of our students, they're all reading it, seeing it the same way.
Good plan. Ah, Mary is our colleague, and she's offering some good advice to Kaylin. Love it. I'm going to go ahead and read this because I don't think you guys can see each other's comments, but Tami, Mary says, Kaylin, with statistics, if you know how to use random generator in Excel, you can get students to generate a random data set, create their confidence interval, then based on their interval and their peers, guess the true value of the parameter. Great way to get the whole random variation piece as a part of their learning. And they all get different intervals, so plagiarism proof. Gotta love that. We're actually doing, aren't we, tomorrow night? Escape rooms?
No, we're doing Google.
Whoops, never mind. Mary did an escape room presentation just a couple weekends ago, and she used Excel to do an escape room, and students had to escape out of her statistics thing. It was very cool. Any other questions? Any other thing we can talk about? Oh, so now you guys can all see?
Well, I think at the bottom where you type it in, it's either all panelists or all panelists and attendees.
Oh, I didn't know if everybody had that option or not. Sorry about that. Okay, got it. Yeah.
All right, you got to show them the next slide.
I really don't want to show them the next slide. Listen, Tami likes
kittens. No, it's your favorite one, isn't it?
Oh, it is my favorite one. Never mind. I'm not mad at Tami for this one. Yay. Okay, this is my favorite slide, and the statistics people will like this as well. I'm having a problem figuring out where to click. There we go. Nope, still not. There we go. Ready? If hotness was a normal distribution, you'd be 3 standard deviations above the mean. If you're not a statistics person, that's hilarious. I'm just saying. So again, inject a little humor here and there, and you're good to go. And as far as memes go, I don't know if you know this, but meme generator, and it's just meme generator.net. I hope I spelled it right. You can actually make your own memes. Super easy to do. You just choose a picture, and then when you choose the picture, you get to fill in the words just like this, and then you download it. And it's easy to do, and you know, easy to share and everything like that. We can share these memes. Danny is our helper from Hawks, and how can we share our slides, Danny? He can jump in and let us know that.
Yeah, we can take if you just send me the PowerPoint, I will host it on the same page that we'll be hosting this recording and all of the recordings for the entire virtual summit.
Perfect, that sounds great. And I'm going to just show you quickly if I can bring it up quickly. It's sort of slow right now, but yeah, meme generator is the place you can make memes. I was going to try and just bring it up really quickly and show it to you, but it's being slow. Yeah, so here's one. I'm just going to drag that right over there. And so you can choose, you know, here's a nice koala bear. You can choose whatever you want. Oh, look, if a person sneezes, probably not good these days. But you can just choose it, and then you can put your text in here, and then you just say generate meme. And the only thing is, it has like a little, you know, a thing at the bottom that says, you know, that you made it here. But that's okay. It's sort of like not like a copyright, but you know what I mean. It gives them credit. And so that's just one way you can do it. So I'm going to move this off of here. There we go. And Judy said, once you finish the discussion board with the class, does it automatically save in content so that students and instructor can review it later? Judy, I think you said that you were using Blackboard, and I'm sure other LMSs, learning management systems, work the same way. There's a setting that you can choose whether to let students keep seeing it or whether to hide it, and you would just want students to keep seeing it. So you would just let it so that it would always be available, and you'd be good to go. You can change the settings so that after a certain due date, students can no longer post on it. So you might not want to keep that conversation going forever and ever, but you can still leave it there so they can refer back and things like that. So absolutely. Anything else? You guys are so good. Listen, we got this, right? We have got this. It'll be okay. It'll take a while. We'll all get our bearings. Everybody's going to come out doing great things. It's just in the meantime, some growing pains and some craziness. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you very much, professors. This was great. And thank you, audience. We had awesome interaction throughout. Appreciate you all sharing, jumping in, talking, and participating. Again, we will be sharing a link to this recording as well as the PowerPoint slides up on that page where we'll be hosting all of them from throughout the week. We'll email you a link to that at the end of the week so that you can go back and review all those sessions. If you have questions, you can email us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. And we appreciate everyone coming to this presentation today.
Thanks.
All right, take care.